Tennessee head baseball coach Tony Vitello. Tony, we talked earlier today, my friend, and I don't think there's a handbook for any of us to sort of navigate what we've gone through the last few days. Tell us what that meeting was like with your baseball team when you told them that essentially you guys were shutting it down for a while.
Well, we kind of had two meetings, actually, and the first one was the suspension till the 30th was the original plan for, I think, everybody across the country. And that was kind of more of a delirious feeling for our guys. I mean, moving classes to online makes them think they're on spring break constantly. We had to remind them that you're still needing to do the schoolwork, and we'll navigate through that. So in a weird way, they were almost kind of giddy. And then for our team in particular that we had this year with some of the arm injuries, two kids really talented that were sore, and then a senior, Will Heflin, who had a leg injury he was coming back from, it kind of made sense, that we needed a couple weeks to kind of get our feet underneath us. Liam Spence, our starting shortstop, had been playing through an injury, and Zach Daniels had been DHing instead of playing the outfield because of some arm soreness. So we had all kinds of stuff that, a couple, 2-3 weeks would have really benefited our team. So they kind of were excited. And then the next day, when things basically were suspended indefinitely, or really the season was kind of canceled, it's still tough for me to even speak on all that because some of it's up in the air and some of it I don't understand. They kind of look like, lost cows out in a pasture the next day. And, really kind of hard to grasp all this, I think, for any adult, much less a young adult that's the age of most of our players.
Coach, it's Austin, and I'm going to go ahead and preface this. This is not me trying to lead you into putting the NCAA on blast, but where were you when all that came down, that they went ahead and just canceled the College Baseball World Series, which isn't until June? I mean, I'll go put them on blast. It's just asinine and just dumb. But I mean, where were you, and just kind of what was going through your mind? Was it one of those moments where you're like, am I reading that right?
Well, for my personal experience, it's hard for me to sleep on getaway day, and how it played out for me personally was Thursday, 3/11, almost kind of scary that the 11 was in there. 3/11 was kind of the date where they started making some pretty big claims about this virus. And then on on Thursday, we were supposed to wake up and go to South Carolina. And again, I don't sleep very well, so I got up real early, kept throwing on the radio on different channels as I was packing my bag. And it wasn't but about 6:30 a.m. where I said, there's no way we're going on this trip. And I even had to meet with a couple kids about, the first travel roster to SEC play left off some pretty good players. And I'm meeting with kids, and they're heartbroken they're not going over to South Carolina. And I kept saying under my breath, and then even to a couple of the kids face-to-face, I don't think we're going to go. So it's kind of been interesting how the whole thing's unfolded for the whole country. And then in the athletics world, it wasn't like a playoff loss where all of a sudden your season is over. It's been kind of this crazy step-by-step deal that's really made it more surreal than I can put into words. I mean, I should have feelings, but I really don't have any feelings about this at all. I hope my parents and the rest of my family and everyone else I know stays safe, and even people I don't know too, obviously. And, the rest is out of my hands.
So what was the message to the team during this downtime where you can't get together, you can't practice, you can't really work on stuff as a group? What was the message, and how can your team still stay engaged with the hope that they actually do at least reconvene at some point this year for a little baseball, maybe even an SEC tournament down in Hoover?
Yeah, and really they can't do anything right now, and part of that is stuff I don't want to fumble over my own feet saying stuff I shouldn't, but I think the bottom line is when we met, we talked to our guys about, okay, in the middle of the season, you don't want to say we're really good and beat your chest because that's just bad karma. But as it stands right now, we had a really, really good team for 17 games. And that group of young men still exists, and we're technically still a team. So our hope is in some form or fashion, hey, even if it's one charity game or one final scrimmage or or anything. Again, it's hard for me to pinpoint details or speak entirely honestly about the whole thing, but it would be neat for that group to be together again on the field. But for that season that took place for 17 games, it was a really fun group and a very talented group.
Tony, it's Chris again. I know coaches by nature and are optimists, and we'll play fantasy here. I'll do it. How much interest would there be? Can you imagine the interest if? And again, all this is prefaced by a month from now, everything starts to loosen up. The medical people tell us that we're in much better shape. But let's say in mid-May, that all 14 teams in the SEC convene there at the Hoover Met and just play an SEC tournament. And again, 1 through 14, 1 plays 14, 2 plays 13. Just how much interest there would be across the board in that, especially in the realm of SEC baseball.
Sure. Well, you've got an explosive combination that it doesn't take an expert to point out, but if you just kind of sit back and say the facts, you've got the best amateur baseball in the world. And that's no disrespect to, I spoke with Randy Mazey earlier, Carrick Jackson, guys of Power 5 schools and even mid-major schools. And, of course, Wright State came into our own stadium and beat our butt. But across the board, SEC baseball is the best amateur baseball in the world. So you put those teams in one area, and then you combine it with the fact that SEC fans are the most rabid fans in the world. Probably I can make that statement too, but at least in college sports are the most fanatical fans that are out there. That's really the only combination you need to explain kind of what you're getting at. Is it'd be a pretty high level of interest, and it would be a pretty remarkable scene.
Well, and I know, again, none of us know there's a lot more questions right now, Tony, than answers across the board. Fans, administrators, coaches, and it changes every day, and I'm sure it'll change in the next week and the next 2 weeks. But I can say this, and again, we had this discussion earlier off the air, had a chance to come to several games this year, and what a fun team to watch play. The balance of your team, pitching and batting, the way every game, it was someone different. And I know that's the hardest thing for you and the kids on that team and the fans. I can't tell you the number of people who were so fired up about seeing your team play in SEC competition. And I got to think you feel like, regardless of whether you play one more game or 12 more games this year or no more games, that this is another huge step in the right direction for your baseball program.
Yeah, I think so, and in an odd manner. Well, first of all, in baseball, you always want to find positive, even when negatives are in front of you. And we lost a couple non-conference games and probably would have lost one of them anyway. But I think as a direct result of looking ahead to SEC play, which is a common phrase for media or color analysts or even just coaches of, don't get trapped or don't look ahead. But in a weird way, it was kind of a positive or a sign of progress for our program that our guys were anxious and hungry for that Round Rock tournament, which was kind of billed as the best of the best, or the best outside of Omaha is the label they put on that phrase. The bottom line, it was really good competition. And then SEC play, the guys were dying to be, in the midst of conference play, whereas a couple of years ago, I feel like our guys were a lot more comfortable when the fire wasn't burning too bright or too hot, if that makes sense. And so, there was a lot of ways our guys made progress on the field, and probably the most astounding way they did that or the offensive numbers. On base percentage, everyone talked about the home runs, and those will come and go, but on base percentage is a true reflection of a team, doing whatever they can to win. And we're in the top 5 in the country. And then walks per 9 innings is a pitching statistic we talk about with our pitchers. Everybody's pitchers are going to have good stuff in the SEC, but if you throw strikes, you'll win. And we're in the top 5 in that category as well. And really, I think we might have been in the top 3 of those 2 categories. So lots of signs of progress for the program on the whole. And, of course, you want to play out a full season, but, to have some progress is a good feeling amongst the staff.
Well, Tony, man, we really appreciate you spending some time with us tonight. And I think I speak for a lot of people in these parts and anybody connected with the University of Tennessee. We would love to see this group of players get back and play some more baseball this year. So let's hope that happens. And meanwhile, you stay safe, and we hope everybody out there stays safe. But thanks for spending some time with us tonight on The Nation.
No doubt. Thank you guys for the time, and I agree with those sentiments. Everybody stay safe and smart, and we'll see you at the park one of these days.